Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another repeat of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you for a little combined domestic power rankings. We're doubling down on this Western power ranking so that the bottom feeders get a little bit of love and we get to talk about them. And going into the LCK to start things off, because this is fully bizarro world that we are living in this final split of LCK action in 2026. The Legend group, we're used to the top three beating up on the bottom two and not winning a single game all season. But here we are with both Dplus, Kia, and KT roster putting together near immaculate 2-0 weekends against a bunch of top dogs, and we're sitting here talking about those two at the top of the rankings, Mark.
Nobody. I will not listen to a single person saying that they had this predicted at the beginning of the year, this split, whenever you want to say it. I don't think anybody was put their finger on this one, because this is truly the wild times of the LCK right now. And we're all here just enjoying this one at this point, because this has really shaken up that expectation that a lot of people have for what was going to be that top part of the LCK, and especially where you would see that competition. It is wide open in that region.
And again, this isn't Hanwha. Okay, I'll give Gen G is not looking like Gen G. Them being the 5th spot on this list, bottom of the Legends group on the ranking, is one of the many insane things on this list. But T1 and Hanwha have been fine to good. It's just Dplus and KT had something injected into their Wheaties, because these boys, the aiming trade did something. We were expecting Jibu just to come in, be the main starter, sure. And Fenrir had different ideas, because your boy just bodied Gumayushi. It was Fenrir and Perfect absolutely laying into Zeus and Guma in this set.
This is, again, something different from KT, when we're not just, again, going on about the BDD show. Maybe we're not even talking about what's happening from the jungle. You're talking about Perfect, and you're talking about Fenrir being their main reasons why you're getting on through. And I'm so happy that Fenrir is getting this opportunity, because when we talked about that trade, again, like everybody else, I assumed that Jiwoo would step into that starting position. But there was part of me that felt like it was, a wasted chance to take a look at Fenrir, because he had stepped in, and again, as we mentioned, didn't really have any scrim results with the team, anything else like that, but the result was there. And if you were just simply going to go, okay, that's a one-off, whatever, input Jiwoo, you can envision that. You understand that teams do that from time to time, but it would have felt like that missed opportunity to see if you had something else, something different. And Fenrir is showing you that different, and that different is a KT that is winning out in this top part of the LCK.
And you can't bench him now, not after this series he just had against an elite bot lane in Hanwha. So yeah, fully expect him to be the starter going forward. And like, KT kind of easily handles T1 2-0's Gen G, and then Hanwha is losing to both Dplus and KT. I mean, it's a mess right now. Obviously, if you want to include what was going on earlier in the year, you do a little bit of different rankings. But for the LCK domestic, we're looking at just, this first week of action, and there's no way to not put Dplus and KT where they are. And now you're sitting here, the entire Legends group is separated by 2 games, and the top 3 record-wise are all sitting at a 15-5 best of series record. This split is going to be insane. It already is insane.
It's one of the ones where I think, again, it doesn't really take the most analytical mind, or someone looking through too far back in history to say that you've got some issues with this type of formatting, this type of scheduling, whatever. But I think what we're getting this year has to be what the people that would, come up and support this idea say, this is the perfect storm. This is why you want this type of format, when you have teams performing like this, and you can have just the absolute uncertainty at this top end, at the highest level in the LCK. And that's something that I don't think you've been able to say previous formats, previous type of splits. And I think that you found that perfect storm this year with the format, with the teams performing in this type of way at this crucial point of the year, that it has delivered on the drama, and we're only going to get even more given the shape that we're in right now.
And it's still a bit murky, very early, obviously, in this split, where I'm left going, okay, do we have 5 incredible teams that it's going to be hard to even select 4 to go for Worlds? Or do we have 5 pretty decent teams that have kind of all been brought down to that middle tier, and there's less of that elite status in the LCK right now?
I think your answer to that is going to come through the form of Gen G. Is this the total fire sale? Is this the engine is broken? This team is no longer functioning in various aspects of it compared to the well-oiled, dominant, back-to-back champion team that this Gen G organization has shown us, this roster has shown us they are capable of. If we don't get that, then I think, yeah, that conversation is going to be different, and it's going to be more so about looking at, again, squads like Dplus Kia, like KT Rolster, and then continuing this type of form. Otherwise, I think you do start to have to look towards that other end of that conversation that you're talking about.
And obviously, that will have some implications on who steps up from that Rise group. We got to do the second half of the rankings as well. Give them some love. We got Nongshim slowly, maybe, possibly, sort of figuring things out. Apparently, the path is throwing an Aatrox AD carry for Diablo in the bot lane. Maybe that's the secret, but they right now are progressing towards the top of the table in this Rise group.
It's one of those things where, again, because things are so dramatic, so unexpected at that very top, you might be forgetting what's happening down in that Rise group, but you got to remember that, again, you are going to have some type of interaction, and there certainly are avenues for these teams to be improving themselves, and that's exactly what you're talking about and what you're seeing there with Diablo. Specifically in that mention was someone who I think needs this opportunity to improve, to reposition and solidify his positioning in the LCK as far as down as the ADCs, and so good to see that. And as well, look, these games matter depending, no matter who you are. You see the fans. I saw, again, the DN Supers ending the losing streak that they had been on for so long. Woo. One of the fans crying in the stands. You go, who the hell is a DN Supers fan? And I tell you, it's that guy in the fans, in the stands, crying at his team finally ending the losing streak. Yes, they might not always add up to being that world champion at the end of the day, but these Rise groups, they will matter, and to see them and to get to check in on them is always a fun time.
And you know what? Getting that upset, because DN Supers beating anyone is an upset, ending the losing streak, that's enough. We had to give him credit. Get him out of the bottom. Throw the bros in that 10 spot for being the ones that dropped that game to DNS.
Yeah, exactly. And really also, I think I'll add in on the bros, unfortunately, is that I think you had some expectations for them in this lower group of the LCK, and especially the way that things went towards the end of that second split and where you would hope to have picked up off of. Not exactly what we have seen from the bros, and especially dropping the 1 to the Supers to end their losing streak. You got to have some consequences, and that's, again, occupying the bottom spot in the LCK.
Still not exactly envisioning them climbing to the play-in stage and potentially getting upset against a legend group. But for now, we celebrate doubling the series win total on the year for those DN Supers. Continuing on with the theme of doing this combined Western power ranking for, what is really week 2. Still very early for a lot of these, but interesting to go back and forth, feature all these squads, and, talk about where they match up. Obviously, internationally this year, the LCS has gotten the better of Europe when you look at mainly MSI, the most recent one. But despite all that, I think very early signs, because they've played so many games, no question, right now, Carmine Corp is looking like the top squad in the West.
Which is a good, strong bounce back for this organization, for this team. And I think it is the answer that a lot of people needed, given the way things went on the international stage and, EWC and everything else, you get to start out this split, you get the homestand and everything else is feeling good, and you keep the results rolling for this squad is one of the big reasons why you can have them in this position, and you feel so good about their form of play right now.
And, obviously G2 has had their number, and even G2, this is where it gets fun, because you fit in the LCS squads where you go, well, Team Liquid recently slammed KC, Lion recently slammed G2, so we kind of slot TL and Lion in between, because KC has looked incredibly dominant since that loss to TL, especially if you include EWC, but Team Liquid has looked the most dominant team in the LCS through 2 series, and that combined with obviously Armeo starting over Inspired so far, we put TL ahead of them, but Armeo has looked pretty damn good. I'll give him that credit.
It should really kind of go to showcase just how impressive the bounce back and meaningful that bounce back has been for Carmine Corp since MSI, in comparison to looking then again, as you mentioned, looking at those LCS squads, and then G2 is the one that has still not had enough go their way where you can simply just go, okay, slide away MSI result type of situation. It's not that. And so you do have to look at that for the LCS squads. And as you mentioned with the LCS squads, your boy Armeo, who would give yourself an extra pat on the back if you're still hanging around and you know that Grig is Armeo all the way down that line, and grab yourself an Advil for your arthritis while you're at it, because you got to be an old head like us hanging around if you do remember that. But shout out to your boy Armeo and the way that he has been playing. He hasn't missed a beat stepping back onto that LCS stage, and he has filled in more than suitably for your boy Inspired on this Lion roster. The results, 2-0, no problem.
And I think the rest of the squad has had to step up, fill the void left by Inspired. Obviously, mechanically, just as a player, and of course even more so communication and leadership wise, you've seen guys like Saint, Dokla, Isles, Berserker, all 4 of them really step up in his absence. The 3-1 start for G2, it hasn't been dominant by any means. There's been some shaky even in their wins, which is why they're behind those 3 we just talked about. But this top 4 here is definitely, you can draw the line. That's where the contender status ends for both EU and NA, because I'll lump all 4, Vitality, FlyQuest, Koi, and Cloud9. You're kind of going, you know what, there's some expectations for these squads, but early signs are they have not reached close to those expectations.
When we're talking about those 4 squads occupying those top spots, it's one of those ones where you can envision, you can understand, and you should be preparing your target sites for the teams from the LCK, from the LPL, from, again, every other region on that international level, and keeping that eye out and keeping that focus, knowing that you're going to have to be prepared for it. Once you step outside that top 4, that's a pipe dream to start putting your targets on that international scene. You need to put your targets on your own region, in the domestic scene, and take care of business at this point. Find your improvements. And unfortunately, a squad like Cloud9 finds themselves in this position where they're almost usually always very familiar, and finding themselves in that top position where they are aiming at that international stage. It's very different right now, where you got to kind of reset, reorientate yourself and still get business done.
Slogging through a 3-game series against Dignitas is not exactly going to skyrocket you through any type of power rankings. FlyQuest also had a decent bounce back. I mean, they had an incredibly dominant 1-game win against Disguise, so happy to see that. Vitality had a nice 2-0 as well, but it was against Heretics, who we'll get to a little bit later. And then Movistar Koi, I think, far and away the highest expectations of this group of 4 squads, and you've heard the cast kind of compare them now to a Gyarados and Magikarp, and I think that's very fitting. They go from looking like contenders for KC and G2 to looking like contenders for the bottom of the table, but the early signs, and we have more games out of them, 5 series, than most teams in Europe or the LCS, they are way too reliant on Mr. Jojo Pien 1v9 right now. which means we need someone not named Elyoya to step up alongside the Batman that is JoJo.
It means that when the screw is tightened, when you are under that pressure and in a situation where your opponent is stronger, more ferocious and tenacious out there at Summoner's Rift on what they're trying to do, you can't have that be the only positive angle, the only thing that's getting it done for you. Because again, to be fair to JoJo Pyun, sometimes he's not at his very best, or he isn't able to get that advantage on that opponent. What do you do then? And when that is the only avenue that has been this positive driving force, this force that really is the reason why you're making it through and pushing down these nexuses, then you have to have those questions about a squad like Movistar Koi, and especially, kind of with a relatively long, consistent, trail of disappointments. You have to look at them, and especially this split, and have different expectations, different requirements from them before we're willing to throw them into that same type of category as a Carmine Corp, as a G2 in that top contender status. Taking a bit of a hit, and yes, the results are coming through so far this split, but when you look at them and when you're looking for something to be different, to be better, to be that stronger angle, when you do have these tougher competitions, I don't think I've seen it yet from this group.
Supa and Mirwin playing at the level that they are right now, this team is not going to Worlds. They need those two especially to absolutely level up as this split goes on. Last two guys on this board, we got SK and Na'Vi. And SK, listen, they look like a different team with Slow Q in as that starting mid laner. I know they got 2-0'd by G2, but that doesn't really fully do it justice how close that series actually was. And I've seen more positives in two series out of this team than the majority of last split.
They're a real team. They're a real team. You can just stop it at that period point there. They were at no point a real squad, a real LEC level of threat with leader in that position. And you can take that about the individual. You can take that about how the whole roster cohesed and was able to work with certain parts of it and where those faults were, whatever. But having this change right now and what we have seen from this SK team, I'm willing to see this play out throughout this summer. I'm invested in seeing the improvement, hopefully, of this team and a climb, as opposed to I had sold out any type of hope or expectations of SK if they were going to roll through that same lineup into this split.
And Omega shout out to Yopa in the bot lane. This dude looks like a legit star in the making in the LEC, and having a guy like Mickey beside him obviously going to help him grow. But he looked confident and looked like SK's ready to play around this kid, and they absolutely should be going forward. Bottom half of this board, this is where we get to the fun stuff, because I think, hot take right now, the bottom two teams in EU are a lot worse than the bottom two teams in the LCS, and that is Heretics and Shifters. If you had some best ofs between them and Dignitas and Disguised right now, I think NA's coming away with an easy win.
Which I don't know how you ever really can or would want to evaluate something like this, but I feel like this is kind of a paradigm shift of having these bottom feeding teams of the LEC be so poor, in comparison to still not being very thrilled with what we have at the bottom of the LCS, but absolutely in comparison, you are taking these LCS squads at the bottom right now, even with any criticisms you want to throw onto Disguised or whatever.
And there's lots to throw. Yeah.
Sure, there's no shortage of that, but you better be bringing a dump truckload more if you're looking over at squads like Team Heretics in the LEC.
And you could talk about the power vacuum of there only being 8 teams in the LCS, the talent more widespread in the LEC, but we're just so used to the bottom 2 to 3 teams in the LCS being significantly worse than those out of Europe. But yeah, Heretics and Shifters both looked real bad this weekend. And, Giant X and Fnatic have only played a single series, so there's not that much to go on. Giant X was definitely the more disappointing set because it was SK versus Koi. But listen, Fnatic took a game off Koi and it was contested, so still just way too early to properly grade either of those squads.
Yeah, and I think it's also part of it as well. Still with Giant X, you maybe had held out hope, some type of maybe delusion that there was signs of them improving into this split, and you would see it, and you haven't quite had that type of result to kick things off here in the LEC. The Shifters one to me still is really the most disappointing because number one, again, who the hell chose that as the rebranding naming type of thing? That was
We'll never
so
forgive
stupid and never gonna get that one. And secondly, the regression of this lineup of the organization and where they stand within the LEC. And again, it's not like it's been rapid, it's been slow, it's been week after week and building type of thing. But you get to this point. Remember looking back just 2 years ago when you were talking about BDS being one of these teams to challenge G2, to challenge towards that top end. Maybe they're going to be this other French rivalry alongside the Blue Wall. And where are they now? Where are they now? Down here playing meaningless games down at the bottom of the LEC with no hope. And I mean no hope of getting out in this situation. Really is, I think, one of the more depressing and frustrating stories within the LEC.
The positive switch goes over to the LCS. Even the middle teams, we're talking Shopify and Team Sentinels, you see here, and they went a combined 0-4 across the board this week, but there's still positives about them, and they were playing Lion and Team Liquid, so kind of unexpected 2-0. But again, if you match them up against a lot of the middle tier in the LEC, I think both squads hold their own.
And I think that maybe is that the benefit of having only 8 teams in the LCS, that you're not
100%.
So quick to maybe write off some of these middle, the pack average teams from where they want to figure themselves out. And that is where you do talk about squads like Shopify Rebellion, like the Sentinels, that I think are kind of, again, still just behind a squad where you're looking like a Cloud9, like maybe a FlyQuest type of situation, but have still shown you more than enough that you're not going to write them off the way that we are talking about squads like the Shifters, like Team Heretics that we've seen in the LEC. So there's something about that for the LCS, and still one of these ones where avenues of improvement, despite being maybe unlikely, are there for both of these organizations to climb up and potentially be one of these dark horse options within the LCS.
Rebellions are built on hope, and there's still some hope for Shopify to do something this split. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Absolute stunners. Thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you on the flippity flip.